What is going on, music maker family? This is Strat Carter from Strategic Audio, and today we got a brand new video. I wanted to talk a bit about how you can take a soulful melodic sample, an old vintage type sample, and flip it into a hard grimy boom bap beat. Now, you might not think that the sample would fit into a hard grimy boom bap beat. You might more think that it would fit into another style of beat, one of those more soulful J. Cole type beats perhaps. But the challenge is to be able to take a sample and hear elements in it or hear textures in it that will allow you to turn it into pretty much anything that you want. So without further ado, let's get started on my process of how I could take a soulful melodic sample and flip it into a hard, dusty, grimy boom bap beat. So this is the sample I'm going to use. Let me just play it for you. This is, I like to call it a vintage soul sample, and it is from my newest loop kit. It's called Elements. In the description, you're going to find a link to both the free version and the premium version. But enough about that. Let's get into how I took this and turned it into something dark and grimy. Now, the first thing I did was open up the sample, as you can see here in Serato sample, which is currently my favorite sampler. And for whatever reason, Serato got the key of the sample incorrect. The key of the sample is G sharp minor. And as you can see here, it says E. The relative major of G sharp minor is actually B major. That doesn't really matter so much right now because I already know the key of the sample because it's a sample I made. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to pitch that sample down. So I just randomly chose 3 semitones and I pitched it down 3 semitones. Here it says C sharp, but it's not really C sharp. 3 semitones down from G sharp minor is F minor. So after pitching it down, this is what it sounds like. So right away, it already sounds a whole lot darker because I pitched it down. So it's beginning to sound dark and grimy already. So take a look at these marker lines here in Serato. All I did was I went here and I said set slicer. And then I click set slicer and it sliced up some predetermined sections. I think they're all equal. You can control the frequency of the slices by going from 1 to 2 to 4. It basically either chops it smaller or broader or wider. I prefer to leave it at 2 because I like to have a little bit more bite-sized slices when I'm sampling. So this is not really a tutorial on how to use Serato, nor is it a tutorial on how to sample, mainly because I'm really not so sure that you can teach someone how to sample. I'm an old school guy and sampling is a very traditional old school part of hip hop. And I came up learning my trade initially with sampling. Before I knew music theory and knew how to play instruments, I started with sampling. And it's very much about having an ear for the music, listening keenly and carefully, and finding areas that you think will fit, finding areas that go well together, understanding cadence and rhythm and flow. And it's not so much just about finding a loop and using that loop on top of some drums, although that does work. But in this case, I went through and I found certain chops that played well together that I was able to use almost like notes on a keyboard to play a separate and distinct melody from what the actual sample was doing. So for the chorus or hook part, these are the chops that I came up with. So, like I said, it was just about finding chops that work well together, finding a rhythm for them, and creating a melody that had the feeling that I was going for, something a little bit ominous and a little bit dark. Alright, so these dark grimy beats tend to be fairly simple, and this is no exception. I made a second set of chops that would work well as the verse area, And this is what those sound like. If you'll notice, the chops in the chorus area are a lot more full. They contain parts of the sample that have all the elements playing, and the chops in the verse area, I used parts of the sample that were more stripped down and only had one or two of the elements playing. This is very useful basically because you just want to be able to leave space for the artist to rap or sing. To give it that really grimy feel, I decided to add some grimy ass hip hop drums. Here's what those sound like. So those drums really don't have much processing on them at all. It's all about sound selection. I chose some dusty, grimy sounding boom bap drums and played them in a pretty traditional boom bap style, pretty slow. The BPM is 76. And every hip hop head knows that drum pattern is strictly boom bap. So now we got the drums and we got the sample. Now the sample already has a bass line in it, but what I did was I cut that out. This is the EQ I used on the sample, so you see I cut out the majority of the bass. I cut out some of the mud and I accentuated the high and the high mids. This area here where you would tend to find the keys and the pianos and plenty other instruments, I wanted to bring those out a little more. Having done that, I added in my own bass. I wanted the bass to be a lot simpler than what it was in the sample because the sample was done as kind of a very musical, melodic kind of vibe. So the bass goes a lot of different places. So for this, I wanted the bass to be really stripped down, really simple, one or two notes that are sustained notes mainly. So this is what the bass sounds like. The bass that I played sounds like playing with the sample. Similarly, I did the same thing for the verse part. The drums in the verse part are the same because I want to keep this simple. What I will do is during the arrangement, if I'm making this for an artist, I drop out certain parts of the drums at certain places just to give it some dynamics. But for the purpose of this little showcase / tutorial, keeping everything kind of simple. So because the sample chops are different in the verse, I wanted to play something slightly different with the bass in the verse. And this is what it sounds like. At this point, I really like how it was sounding. I'm a melody guy, so I wanted to add in a couple more melodies on top of that. It's just light stuff in the background because the sample is the driving force of this beat, the sample and then the drums. So I opened up Serum and used one of my original presets that I made and played this extremely sparse little pluck / bell sound and added that on top. Now let's hear how that sounds. It's not much, it's very subtle, and it kind of accentuates notes that are already being played either in the sample or with the bass. So I panned that to one side, and to round out the stereo field, I added another small element and panned it opposite to that. The small element I added was just some strings. There's also some strings in the hook as well. I'll play that later. So because the hook was already so full, I wanted to accentuate the melody of the hook. It isn't much melody, but what melody is there I wanted to accentuate, so I played these strings on top of the hook. So after adding those elements, I figured there's nothing else that I need for this. The main purpose of this was to take a melodic sample, soulful sample, chop it up, turn it into a grimy, hard boom bap beat. And there's no need to go overboard with the music. All I really needed to do then, all I did then, was I mixed it, I arranged the verse area, gave it a final master, and this is what the beat sounds like. So let me know in the comments who you can hear on this. Maybe someone from Griselda, maybe Joey Badass, maybe even a Wu-Tang member. It certainly has a hard edge. It certainly has kind of an ominous feeling to it. And that's exactly what I was going for. Anyway, thanks for watching. Again, the sample is an original sample made by me. The pack is available in the description. There's also a free version, so no worries. If you like this type of video, I plan to do a lot more. Not only do I create samples, but I make beats, and I love the art of sampling. That's how I got my start. So I'm going to be trying a lot more of trying to take a sample that was made for one style and flip it into a completely different style. Anyway, if you like this, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.